Is CO2 trade an easy way for the big polluters to get out? Is it a kind of pollution laundry? Watch through the video to understand the power of flexibility. Hello and welcome to GHG Guru. I'm Norbert Vasen, energy engineer since 33 years and your guide to greenhouse gas reduction. Whether you are a CEO, a manager for sustainability or just curious, today we are going to talk why a flexible system for CO2 reduction is necessary. We will see the solutions available and we will talk also about in particular about cap and trade. So let's start with the simple question. Why do we need to reduce in a flexible way? The answer lies in the complexity of our society. We live in a global economy and different sectors, different countries, from manufacturing to transport, from service to energy production. They all emit CO2 and also other greenhouse gases at different levels and for different reasons. And also the intensity of the CO2 emission is different. The tons of CO2 per unit of product or service. The sense of the flexibility is a little bit like the function of money. Just like not everyone is able or in the right place to grow vegetables, while you delegate to other people, to specialists which are in countries or in regions where these vegetables grow easily. You are able to grow vegetables at a lower cost. You can use money to exchange these vegetables with people which are in regions where vegetables are not so easy to grow. And in the same way, it is difficult for some sectors, especially those sectors which are very intensive in CO2 or other greenhouse gases, to limit their CO2. They would have to stop with it, they would have to send people on the street, and we would not have any more their products or their services. For example, let's take steel industry. It might be very difficult to reduce 1 ton of CO2 per day, for example, and it might be much more easy to do that in a conglomerate kind of industrial area where there are many small industries and other services. So then you would be able to reduce this ton of CO2 at a much lower cost. It's like picking low-hanging fruit. You take that fruit first and then only afterwards you go for the higher hanging fruit. So in this way it will be easier to reduce CO2 emissions. It will have a lower cost. Anyway, starting with picking the low hanging fruit will make the harvest richer and make also the reduction of CO2 emissions more significant. For a CEO, it's about balancing the sustainability of the business with the economic performance. You cannot simply say you must and you should, even if your feet are underwater. You must make it easy for the businesses and for the people to comply and do what is good for the society and for the climate. Now let's look at 4 ways to reduce CO2 emission and also of the other greenhouse gases. About those other greenhouse gases I will talk in another video. Each of these 4 methods are different and they are better for one or the other activity or industry. So let's start with renewable energy. Shifting to renewable energy sources like solar, like wind, like hydropower or other kinds of energy, renewable energy, shifts the consumption away from the carbon-rich production of energy. And that is of course very good for the activities with a high energy consumption. Then as a second solution there's the energy efficiency. And my first thought about energy efficiency is if you are producing renewable energy and then waste it in a silly way, then that's a pity, because then you need also more investments for this renewable energy plants. The second thought is that every unit of energy saved is completely clean, because it has not been consumed. And you can also say many types of energy efficiency measures, they are quite interesting from an economical point of view. And you should always try to save energy, looking for collateral benefits. but you have, for example, also more comfort, more safety, or another collateral benefit. You must also always try to combine these things together, because then the return time will become often lower. And then we are at 3, and that is very similar to what I said before about carbon trading. It's about carbon offsets. So that means you reduce the emission in another place. It can be reforestation or maybe some big project about energy efficiency in another, for example, in a developing country. And then you take the credits. You reduce the emission, just not in your own factory, because there it might be very difficult. And then there is also the 4th method. It's carbon capture and storage. So for industries with unavoidable emissions, like the cement, the steel industry, but also energy production, you have a very concentrated production of CO2. If it's so concentrated, it's also easier to pick it up and to store it and to put it away. Well, in the past I have been in this sector. I researched also in it, and my thought was instead of putting it away, we can also try to use it. For example, I thought about using CO2 as a cooling medium instead of the gases which you see now in a heat pump. It's a little bit a different technology, but in some cases they can be very interesting. I thought also about disinfection of fruit or vegetables, because parasites cannot live in CO2. I thought about fire extinguishing, which are installed in a fixed place, or even in mobile cooling, so that you can cool with dry ice in places where there's no power. Now let's look how cap and trading works. We all heard about it, and maybe we don't understand exactly what it is. It's one of the most effective ways of trading and picking the low-hanging fruit. Well, the first step is that you put a cap, so you put a limit. So governments, they put a limit on the total amount of CO2 which can be emitted in 1 year. And this limit is valid for a number of participating entities. They can be organizations, they can be industries, they can also be authorities, local authorities, or industrial sectors or servers. This cap, this limit is then usually reduced over time, so in this way the emission reduction will be automatic. And here I have to say immediately, not everybody is under this cap, under this limit. So you have a kind of division of the market, the obligatory market and a voluntary market. It doesn't mean that those entities cannot participate. So now the second step is that you have allowances, and the allowances are just small pieces of this limit which you assign to the different entities. So one allowance is that you are allowed to emit in 1 year a certain amount of CO2 or other greenhouse gas. And these allowances are, like I said, just small pieces of this general cap. In the general concept of the stick and the carrot, then these allowances are the stick. And this is the obligatory market. And then you have another number of entities, organizations or industries or whatsoever, which don't need these allowances. And they belong to the voluntary group, and as I said, they can participate, but if you want them to move to participate, then you have to give them an incentive, and that is the carrot. Now, the stick is only for the obligatory market, but the carrot is for both. If you are an obligated entity, then you can be in two situations. You want to emit more, you want to produce, and you don't manage to stay under the allowances, then you have a problem. But maybe you are an entity which have amount of allowances, but it is easy for you to stay under it, and maybe you can make a difference, and then you have credit, you have a positive difference, and then you can sell that to another. And because the voluntary market, they don't have an obligation, they don't have allowances, they have no limit. Every ton of CO2 that they save, and which is also credited, so certified, it can be used as a carrot for those entities and put on the market. And then we come to the third point, this market, and that's the trade mechanism. So if we talk about the obligated parties, the entities, and if they stay under their allowances, under their limit, then they can take this difference and they certify it and they can sell it to other parties which have more difficulty to stay under their allowance. So that means they can produce, they can do their activities even if they emit more than allowed, and this comes with a price. So they have to buy it from the market, and if they don't buy it, then they will get penalties, and those penalties should be more than the cost of these credits. Otherwise, what kind of penalties are they? So the carrot is for both the obligated parties and also the voluntary entities. That is, they do all kinds of projects to reduce CO₂ emissions in their own home or otherwise in another place, and they have these credits which are certified, and they can sell them on the market. And then on the market, 1 ton of CO₂ can get also different prices. And there are websites which say exactly what the price is for 1 ton of CO₂. So for an entity which has an activity in the industry or maybe agriculture, can create an income stream if you reduce CO₂ emissions in your own home or otherwise in another place, and then you can add that to your income stream and do that together with your normal business. And this gives an enormous amount of flexibility to the voluntary market, which has no cap, and they are very large in number, and they can give an enormous amount of CO₂ credits, and every credit which they produce is an emission reduction, so a benefit, an advantage for the climate, because without these incentives it would be much more difficult to convince them to do something for the climate. And in a hard time this can be a solution. I take only one example. If you have an agricultural activity, you have a hard time, for example, because there's a drought or maybe the market is not good, then you can produce energy, for example solar or wind energy, and in a way that your square kilometers are still useful for making crops, but they can also renewable energy. And then you have 3 income streams: from your crops, from the energy, and also from the carbon credits. So that's it for today. I thank you for being present, and I hope that it was useful for you. In that case, you can support me by subscribing, giving also comments, and sharing it to other people that you know are interested in reducing their carbon footprint. Together we can turn sustainability in a real part of the business, in our daily business.